Hello, and welcome to Charted, an astrology podcast. My name's James, and today we are going to talk about the sign of Taurus. So Taurus is going to be a big deviation from Aries, which we discussed in the last episode, and that's kind of going to be the case for pretty much every sign, but some signs more than others, I think, really kind of have a very large step in a different direction, and Taurus is very much going to be that from Aries. And the reason is because Aries is extremely masculine. It's the most masculine sign. And with Taurus, what we'll see is what I would argue is the most feminine sign. Some people might say Cancer is the most feminine sign. That's certainly a strong argument, no question. But Taurus is very feminine. Now, as we go through the sign and what it's comprised of and how it operates, we'll notice it's not quite as feminine as Aries is masculine, but it does still strongly embody the feminine quality, right? And we'll discuss that here momentarily. If you don't know what I mean by feminine, at least astrologically speaking, I'll clarify here momentarily. So, given this kind of new direction from Aries, right, let's look at what Taurus actually represents, how it operates. We'll start with kind of the components of the sign, and then we'll go through each of the houses, because the houses will tell us a lot about why a sign acts the way it does, right? The zodiac is static. That is, each sign is in a specific order, and that order never changes, which means in relation to each other, right? They're always going to have a certain relationship. Aries is always opposite to Libra. Taurus is always trine to Capricorn, right? They always have those relationships. And so because of that, we can look at the house system, right? We can set a sign to the first house, and then that will tell us the relationship that each sign has to itself. So we'll look at that as well for Taurus, because again, it's going to tell us a lot about why the sign works the way it does. So what are the components? First thing, right? Taurus is a nocturnal sign. Nocturnal, you can equate to feminine. What is feminine? Well, in astrology, the feminine dynamic means it moves inward and it is collective. And this collective quality comes from as things move in towards a center point, they group together and therefore, right, become a cohesive unit of things, a conglomerate, rather than kind of one individual part. The masculine dynamic is to move out from the center, which is kind of an isolating quality, right? Because it moves away from everything. So masculine moves out, deals with the external, and is individual. Feminine is inward in terms of its orientation, and it's collective. So being a nocturnal sign, right, Taurus is naturally going to have a feminine dynamic to it. The next quality, Taurus is a fixed sign. The fixed signs are about attachment. They hold on to things, right? They're fixed. It's a pretty easy name to remember. The fixed signs are going to have some pretty obvious good qualities and some pretty obvious challenging qualities. The good qualities, or the kind of beneficial qualities, are the fixed signs are going to be excellent at maintaining things, right? They're also going to be excellent at holding on to things, right? If we think of an easy example, if I want to go to sleep, right, what do I need to do? Well, I need to acquire something to sleep on, right, a bed. So I'll, go out and I'll buy a bed, then I'll go to sleep. The next night, do I go out and repeat that process? No, I want to maintain that bed I already had, which means I want to, keep it. I'll put it in my room, right? I'll make sure I keep the sheets and the blankets clean, right? So it doesn't become kind of run down and honestly gross. You want to keep it clean. You want to maintain it so that you can continue to use it. You can continue to benefit from it. And so this holding on to quality that the fixed signs have, right, is really good for preservation. On the flip side, sometimes we hold on to things that are not beneficial, right? Hold on to a relationship that's really toxic, right? We hold on to an idea right? That's really harmful. Sometimes we hold on to tastes. They're also, right, disastrous. So the fixed signs, because of this attaching quality and because of this kind of holding on to quality, can be either good, right? Hold on to the good things, or they can sometimes hold on to the bad things. Another aspect of that is that the fixed signs are very rigid by their nature, right? If I want to hold on to something, if I want to preserve something, that by default means I need to maintain it and keep it the same. There has to be a status quo. So the fixed signs tend to stick with what already is, which means they're going to be passive and they're going to be rigid or stubborn. So the fixed signs are very inflexible as a result. Again, that on the plus side provides a sense of stability. On the negative side, it means they're resistant to change. So when things need to change, they struggle. The feminine modality is the fixed modality is a feminine dynamic. Why? Because it is passive, right? It is receptive, sort of, to change. It's passive, but it's also attaching, which means it's about more collective orientation and maintaining what already is, which again is a feminine dynamic. The next quality for Taurus is going to be the element of earth. What is earth about? Earth is about the tangible world that we live in, right? We have physical bodies. We have the need to eat. We have physical senses. We can hear, we can see, we can touch, we can smell, we can taste. So Taurus deals with the physical world. It deals with our physical senses, which means Earth is going to be Earth deals with those things, which means it's going to be a very sensual, right, element, a very sensual sign. Earth, because of this dealing with the tangible world, means it's going to, in a lot of ways, be prone to materialism. We'll see that with certain Earth signs more so than others. Taurus, I think, probably the most prone to that. But Earth, because of this nature of, we have a material world, right, can be prone to materialism, right? It has an orientation towards practicality, though, right? What is necessary, what is necessary for physical survival or helpful in a physical way, that's how we associate things as, hey, there's a practical way to do something. So the Earth element tends towards practicality, right? There's a realism to it. On the other hand, that lends itself to being somewhat cold, right? Earth as a sign is described as a cold and dry sign. Why? Because it's kind of it's a tool in a lot of ways. It's just something to facilitate everything else. The dynamic we see between earth and water is that earth acts as kind of the barrier or the container for water. It's the tool for water to sit in, where it can kind of act. So earth element really kind of operates as a tool, or it's utilitarian in some ways. And again, it deals with the physical world. It deals with the sensual world. And we'll see the sensual side especially highlighted for Taurus. Now, earth is feminine because it's receptive, but it is not super feminine. It's only slightly feminine, right? With Aries, we saw that it's very masculine with the element because it's fire, right? And fire is very masculine. But with Earth, it's not quite as feminine. And the reason is because Earth is very dense, and it's very hard, and it's very resistant to change, much like the fixed modality. So as a result, Earth requires tremendous effort to change it. It also means it's naturally very rigid. So as a result, with Taurus, what we're going to get is we're going to get the rigidity of being a fixed sign, but also the rigidity that comes along with an earth element. And so there's going to be kind of a double whammy there in terms of the staying power. And we'll come back to that. Now, the last quality for Taurus is that it's ruled by the planet Venus. What is Venus about? Venus is about value. It's about what we value. It's about how we value, right? And you might be thinking, wait a minute, I thought Venus was the planet of love and relationships. And that's true. it is about those things. But what are those things? Those things are extensions of value, right? Why? If I value somebody, what am I going to do? I'm going to show them love. I'm going to show them care, right? I'm going to express something in an emotional sense or, right, mental sense or whatever it is, friendship, oriented towards them to treat them in a specific way. Why? Because I have a certain value for them. Looking inward at ourselves, right, we have a certain sense of worth that we tend to get mostly from our childhood, but we can cultivate that as we get older, even if while we were young, it wasn't very high. So we have an inner sense of value, and when we feel valuable, or when we don't feel valuable at all, that tends to naturally emanate from us, and we associate with things that we see as kind of on our level. And that's going to go into the things that we tend to attract, right? And that we tend to love and desire. So Venus is necessary, kind of a key thing it has to focus on as a planet is value, right? Finding our own sense of value. That's part of looking at our own Venus in our charts. But going back to Taurus then, right? What do we get when we put all this together? What we get is a sign that is about valuing things in a physical way and holding on to that, right? So holding on to things that are physically valuable and expressing value through the physical world. What does that play out like in kind of a practical sense? The easy way I've kind of always, the analogy I guess I could say that I've always used for Taurus is Taurus's MO is to essentially become this castle of comfort, right? Why castle? Well, castles are big and strong and durable and safe and protective. And then on the inside, it's, like I said, it's a comfort castle. It's a pleasure castle. It's a place where it feels very valued. It feels very comforted. It feels very enjoyed. And that's what Venus wants. Venus wants to express value, attract the things that it finds valuable to itself so that you have a connection between same values, right? Like meets like. And going back to this idea of attracting things of the same quality, right? Think of a sports team. When you go to a sporting event, right? You go to watch your favorite team play. Do you go to the game just wearing basic clothes? No, you would go to the game wearing the colors or maybe a jersey for the team you're playing for. Why? So that you can, right, become included, right? Be seen as a part of that same group, right? There's that connection there. Other people wearing those jerseys, wearing that same color might see you and say, hey, right? This is something we have the same value here. We're both valuing the same thing. Let's connect. Right now you can begin to talk, maybe build up a quasi-friendship, right, through the sporting event. It's obviously a very surface level example, but that's the idea of what Venus really kind of how it operates. So find our own value, then express it outwards. And so the way Taurus does this is by finding its own value internally and expressing it out, but in a very physical sense. Why? Because it's an earth sign. So Taurus is naturally going to be associated with physical beauty in a lot of cases. This is going to lead it to being quite creative, for sure, and we'll see this as we look through the houses. But because of the fixed nature, there's a desire to hold on to that physical value. So it can be a bit of it's a bit of an accumulator, right? This is why Taurus is often associated with wealth, right? And bounty is because it wants to accumulate things of value in a very physical way, very earthly way. This can obviously lead to hedonism, materialism, if you're not careful, especially because with Venus, there's what I find attractive, i.e. what I find valuable. And what value may be, what beauty may be to us is going to depend on the person, right? Some people may look for things that are more utility-oriented. Some might look purely out of physical beauty. Some might look for some kind of creative or, inspirational beauty. But however we see that, wherever we see that, however we put that together, right, Taurus wants to tend to accumulate that stuff. If it finds it valuable, it wants to accumulate it and hold on to it. This also means that the things it finds valuable that are not just one-time use, but preferences. Things like foods we enjoy, clothes we like to wear, music we like to listen to. Taurus wants to hold on to those physical, sensual preferences as well. Venus is a very sensual planet, especially in the kind of romantic sense. Again, that ties back to, do I value something? I want to connect with it. And so Taurus really wants to hold on to those same kind of physical preferences as well. If you know anybody who has very strong Taurus placements, what you'll often see is they tend to want to eat at the same restaurants or listen to the same song over and over and over, or they watch the same movies, right? They have their things that they kind of continually come back to because it's a source of what? It's a source of comfort. And for Taurus, it's I know what I like, so I'm going to stick with it kind of a thing. Some other qualities for Taurus is that it's very, it's community-oriented in a sense. It's not like an Aquarius necessarily, but it's very good at connecting with people and wanting to connect with people. It wants to partner up very strongly. It also is a sign that is very good as kind of a sidekick. And I don't mean that in a demeaning way, but Taurus is really humble, if you will, but it's also very safe and very stable and very consistent. And the reason is, again, it's fixed and it's earth. So you get that rigidity to it. When things are rigid, that means they have a level of consistency and reliability to them, and therefore safety to them. So Taurus as a sign is seen as one that's very safe and very stable and therefore very consistent. And so with Taurus, more than any other sign, you tend to know what you're going to get. It really is extremely resistant to change. This then, on the flip side, means Taurus is a sign that's extremely stubborn and very difficult when you come at odds with it, when you need it to do something else. More than any other sign, it tends to get stuck, especially in a physical sense, within its little box of whatever it's doing at the moment. For Taurus, then, in order to get it to change, you oftentimes have to take a very slow and steady pace, or you have to change it from the inside, which we'll talk about later. Now, Taurus, as I said, is very safe and very stable and very consistent, and so therefore very reliable, and it's something that people tend to get along with. It tends to present itself outward as something that's of physical value to others. Right? This is kind of, again, one of the big MOs for Taurus is presenting itself as valuable. This is part of why it's seen as beautiful, because it wants to become physically beautiful, whether that's in the true kind of artistic beauty sense, or if it's more in a utility sense, or some other way, right? Whatever its definition of beauty ends up being, right? It wants to present that way. So let's look at the houses, right? Because this is really going to tell us a lot more depth to what Taurus is. We'll start with the fourth house, because the fourth house is kind of like the engine, right? It's the internal drive for who we are. The fourth house for Taurus, and this is using the whole sign system, right? This logic kind of only makes sense using whole sign. The fourth house for Taurus is Leo. What is Leo about? Leo is about self-expression. And the fourth house is about the home, the family, our lineage, and our private world. Right? This private world part is going to be kind of the key component here. I think home and family certainly will make sense. But if the sense of the where Taurus self-expresses is in the private self, then that means Taurus has a deep need to be seen on the inside rather than the outside. And this is what's going to fuel the need to outwardly project as beautiful or valuable, right? Which means Taurus, more than any other sign, truly has to understand its value in order to express it outwardly, which is part of that looking at who I am, expressing on the inside. Because Leo is in the 4th house, that also means that outwardly, Taurus is not really trying to draw attention to itself for the most part. It's only trying to draw attention to itself in an attractive kind of a way, which means it tends to be a bit low-key and can often be seen as kind of common, I guess. That's not maybe quite the right term, right? Because Taurus does want to stand out in a certain degree in terms of its own worth, but really it really is kind of a common in a sense. But going back to the self-expression through the 4th house, self-expression in the inner world means it needs somebody to see it in the inner world. And this is going to tie into the 7th and 8th house here in a moment. But it also means the internal mind is one of, right, I want to know the self. I want to know who I am. I want people to know me on the inside, right? It also drives this need to, hey, I know who I am on the inside, and therefore I'm going to show it off to the world by being what? By presenting my beauty, presenting my inner worth. Self-expressing also comes through the home, which is part of why Taurus tends to be a homebody. More than any other sign, Taurus likes being at home because home is a place where, hey, that's where it's at its kind of highest self in a lot of ways. This also means that establishing and caring for the family are also going to be quite important for Taurus as a generality. Obviously, it depends on your own chart. But generally speaking, Taurus is going to want to be at home and with the family in some way, shape, or form. And is going to have an emphasis through the family, is going to express itself through the family. Now, if we look at the other two psychological houses, which are going to be the 12th and the 8th. Let's start with the 12th. The 12th is about what we don't know. It's the subconscious. It's hidden things. It's also undoings, right? It's the vices that we have, the things that trip us up in life. So for Taurus, the 12th house is going to be Aries. What's Aries? Well, we discussed it in the last episode. Aries is about self-assertion, right? It's about masculinity. So what Taurus does not understand and what it feels that it lacks, at least consciously, is the ability to self-assert, right? It's the ability to be aggressive. It's the ability to be masculine. This is going to have a couple implications. We'll see this more also with the 8th house, is that first and foremost, it means Taurus is going to be very passive. If you're not self-asserting, what are you doing? You're right, letting others assert. You're being passive. You're holding back. It also means it takes a very non-aggressive stance, i.e., it's peaceful. So Taurus is going to be a very peaceful sign as a result. It's going to be a very peace-oriented sign. And Venus is a planet about peace. Why? Because, again, if I'm trying to value things, then I'm naturally going to want to be in harmony with them. So Taurus is a sign that's very peaceful. It's very non-aggressive. But it also tends to, as I said, it lacks that conscious understanding of aggression. And so aggression tends to come out subconsciously. This can lead to anger issues regarding Taurus if it's not careful. Certainly it depends on its relationship with Mars. But as a generality, right, Taurus is going to struggle with its own ability to assert itself. Kind of needs to be pushed. If we look at the 8th house, going back to the 12th house, one other thing for this is the 12th house, because it's subconscious, it's an area that we tend to need to do in isolation, right? 12th house is where we're alone. And so where Taurus tends to need to, or what it needs to do when it's in isolation, or what it tends to be very capable of when it's in isolation, is then being assertive. So Taurus actually works quite well when it's alone. That's not where it wants to be, but it can work quite well when it's alone. Taurus also tends to need to get its energy out in a way, right? I think for most Taurus risings, having an ability to do some kind of physical activity, right? Whether it's going to the gym or hiking or whatever the thing is, Taurus tends to need that as an outlet, right? Now, the 8th house. The 8th house is the other psychological house. The 12th is subconscious. The 4th is kind of our conscious inner world, right? How we process things and so forth. The 8th house is more our psychological hangups, right? It's the house of danger. So it's the things we tend to repress or hide because they're dangerous. It also means the house of taboo. But it's also the house of shared resources, things we share with other people. And as an extension of that, it's the house of intimacy. Because what is intimacy? Intimacy is the ultimate kind of depth of sharing with another person. For Taurus, it has Sagittarius in the 8th house. Sagittarius is about finding truth or finding meaning. So where does Taurus find meaning? It finds it meaning through the 8th house. This is going to have two repercussions. Number one, it means it finds meaning through intimacy, right? And dealing with the psychological things going on, right? Handling that danger. But it also finds meaning through the resources of other people, right? This kind of goes back to that accumulation that Taurus wants to do. Let me accumulate things because I value them. I see their worth. So I want them in my life so I can hold on to them. Let's look at the intimacy part then, right? Finds meaning through intimacy. Why is that important for Taurus? Well, it goes back to the 4th house, right? The 4th house says, I self-express through the inner world, not externally, inwardly. So if I want people to see this inner expression, this inner value that I have, right? It only makes sense then that Taurus would want partners who can find them, it can be intimate with so that they can see that inner world. So for Taurus then, finding meaning comes through intimacy, which means it's uniquely oriented towards partnership, towards getting close to people so that they can see the inner world. Some other things. 8th house is what we repress. So what is it that Taurus represses? Well, the Sagittarius is about exploring the world in order to find meaning. And exploration is one, adventurous, chaotic, risky. But number two, it's not structured. Right? You don't know what you're going to find. And so what is it that Taurus represses? It represses the need to explore. It represses the need to adventure, or more specifically, take risks. So Taurus is risk averse. We already saw that it's not aggressive, but now it's also not risk taking. It's not risk oriented, which means Taurus is going to be the ultimate sign of safety. And when things are safe, they become reliable. And when they're reliable, they're consistent. And we can count on them. And it makes them, valuable. Right? Everything for Taurus is about showing off the value that it has so that other people want to come in and be intimate with it and see it. If we look at the 7th house, and this is going to tie in very much to the 8th, also to the 12th. The 7th house for Taurus is Scorpio. And Scorpio is the sign of intimacy, right? So 7th house is going to show how we relate to other people, what we want from other people or other things, right? It's attachments generally. And so what Taurus wants, because what it doesn't have, is it wants intimacy, which is why it finds meaning through it. It wants to be intimate with things, right? It wants things to be intimate with it. That's probably the better way to say it. Why? So they can see who it is. They can see the real value. Now, Scorpio is it's a masculine sign. Well, it's a water sign. Scorpio is weird. It's kind of it's masculine ruled feminine sign. But it's ruled by Mars, a very masculine planet. So what Taurus wants is it wants somebody to be intimate with it, but it also wants control, right? self-control, really. Scorpio is a very self-controlled sign. It's knows what it wants, and it takes patience to get there. Right? It studies the best path, even if that path takes time. So what Taurus wants then is somebody to approach it in a very patient way, to approach it through a tactful way, but to have that level of self-control, right? The Taurus dynamic that I can struggle with is because 7th house is oftentimes we tend to project it in hopes that we get it. And we usually, if we don't have something, we don't have a quality, when we project that quality, oftentimes we don't project the real thing. We project an imitation that tends to show the negatives of it. And so what are the negatives of Scorpio? Well, number one, it does its own thing. But number two, again, control. Scorpio tends to want to control things a little bit beyond the self. And so what Taurus can be prone to is controlling others if it's not careful, or at least in close partnerships. Another aspect we see is that Scorpio is ruled by Mars. But as we saw, the 12th house is also ruled by Mars. And when you have a connection between two houses, right, because they have the same ruler, because the ruler is from one house, if I can speak correctly here, is in another house, right, you have a connection. And when you have a connection between signs, that means they are linked. One will always kind of go hand in hand with the other. And so the problem that Taurus has, and Scorpio will have this same exact problem because it has the same setup, except with the Venus-ruled signs, is that the 7th house ruler and the 12th house ruler are the same, which means there's that linkage between relationship and loss, isolation, undoings, subconscious, right, hidden things. And so for Taurus, then, relationships truly become a make or break aspect to it. The things it attaches to can make or break it. If it finds meaning through intimacy, then it's imperative that it finds relationships, finds people, partners, who can, right, be intimate with it in a way that's helpful, in a way that's healing, in a way that's not destructive. Because if it can't find those partners, then they will be destructive. Something we will see in a little bit is that the inner world for Taurus is subject to being changed by the things it attaches to if it's not careful. Right? We'll come back to that. If we look at the other social houses, right? Since we're already doing the 7th, let's look at the 11th. The 11th house for Taurus is in Pisces, right? Pisces is the sign of the whole. It's where everything comes together in one big collective soup and then just blends together, where it becomes indistinguishable. Pisces also is where we tend to become something. So what is it that Taurus becomes? It becomes society, right? It becomes its social group. It becomes, right, friends, followers. The 11th house deals with our social groups, our friends, our followers. It also deals with our goals, right? Our hopes and dreams. And so what Taurus becomes is those hopes and dreams, those goals. So there's a goal orientation with Taurus, right? And we look to where's the other Jupiter ruler, because Jupiter rules Pisces. It's Sagittarius. It's, again, 8th house, intimacy. So what does that mean? It means that intimacy and friendships, again, go hand in hand. It also means from a goal perspective, right? Goal and acquisition of resources from others or from other things go hand in hand, which ties back into again, both to that accumulation dynamic that Taurus has, but also that quest to find intimacy. Another aspect of Pisces in the 11th means that Taurus is naturally very good at becoming society. You can really think of Taurus as kind of the salt of the earth people, right? They're tremendous friends, partially because they're so stable and committed, but partially because, again, they simply become the friends. They become the world. And when you have people that are reliable, right? You can count on them. You want them around. There's a value to that. And that's part of the value that Taurus gives off, is this ability to be relied upon through thick and thin, right? And that's part of that becoming the social groups to other people, becoming the value. The other social house, right? It's going to be the third house. Third house is what? It's Cancer. Or at least for Taurus, it's Cancer. What is Cancer about? Cancer is about mothering. It's about nurturing, right? It's protective. It tends to keep things close to the vest. Why? Because it wants to raise a child, right? Or mother something, whether it's a physical child or whether it's a passion or something else. And Cancer is very slow and meandering, right? It moves, but it's not quick to get there because it's risk averse in a lot of ways. And third house deals with what? It deals with our day-to-day, and it deals with our speech, right? Our communications. And so for Taurus, the way it communicates is, one, very closed off, right? Because Cancer is very closed off. It doesn't really say things. It tends to grow over time. Cancer is a sign that really takes time to get to know, right? Because of this closed off nature. So what does it mean? It means in order to communicate for Taurus, that communication is something that kind of grows over time. They're not very upfront about things, right? And this will be part of the challenge for Taurus, but it also leads to its very, right, slow and steady nature. Why? Because third house also deals with our day-to-day. And so it takes a risk-averse approach in the day-to-day. One that's very much oriented around caring for the things around it, nourishing the things around it. This is going to tie into the nature of Taurus, which is to be very nurturing, very nourishing. And that ties back into the 11th house, becoming society, becoming one with its friendships. Part of that connectiveness innately requires, hey, I have to bring value. And what is the value Taurus brings? Obviously, being beautiful in some way. But more specifically, it's going to bring value through being able to care for things, nourish things. Another way in which we see this kind of care is in the 6th house. 6th house is Libra. What is Libra? Libra is also ruled by Venus. So this is where we see the connection between the first house, Taurus, and now the other Venus-ruled sign, Libra, which means for Taurus specifically, the 6th house is always going to be something that it's kind of related to. And what is the 6th house about? It's about servitude and obstacles. So what does that mean? It means Taurus is naturally servant-oriented, right? It's wanting to serve other people. It's a natural way it is. This is why Taurus tends to be so humble. It also plays back into why Taurus tends to get along with everybody, right? If you're a peaceful, passive, right? We talked about this with the 8th and 12th house, risk-averse, right? You don't want to take risks. You don't want to be aggressive. But if your natural demeanor towards handling conflict is one of what? Libra, which is about understanding other people, hearing their points of view. It's about balance. Taurus takes a balanced approach to handling conflict and obstacles. It also takes one where it says, hey, conflict, and not just conflict, but serving other people is just natural to who I am. Right? Well, if you're naturally serving towards other people, naturally caring for other people, and again, tying in that Cancer third house as well, nourishing what's around it, growing what's around it, this is going to lead to Taurus naturally being very friendly and reliable and a good quality friend in a lot of cases. The other aspect of this is, again, Libra is, at its worst, it can be very prone to not asserting at all and kind of doing the inverse of that and saying, I'm just going to do what everyone else says. So there can be that dynamic for Taurus where when it comes to handling conflict, it simply defaults. And this will depend on Venus, where it's at in the chart, what it's doing, and how it's afflicted and stuff. But Libra can default to just simply, right, losing that sense of balance, by simply defaulting to whatever everyone else says, right? Becoming kind of getting steamrolled a little bit in terms of its own preferences. But Libra, when it's in a good spot, is very collaborative, right? So that means Taurus, the way it wants to work through problems is to collaborate, right? The way it wants to serve other people, again, is to collaborate. Let me see what your preferences are and let me see what mine are. Let's see if we can find a solution that helps us both. This is part of why Taurus is so easygoing, kind of easy to get along with. If we look at the second house for Taurus, second house deals with our values. What does Taurus value? Taurus values exchange, right? It's got Gemini in the third house. Gemini is a sign of exchange, sign of communication too, right? Which is kind of interesting, given that the third house for Taurus is Cancer, which is very, like I said, closed off. So how can that be that it values communication and exchange, right, when it's closed off to communication? Well, it's because we look at what's in the eighth house. Where is it finding meaning, right? Intimacy. So the ultimate expression of what it values, exchanging things, is the exchange of what? Intimacy. Getting so close to somebody that we're exchanging the kind of deepest parts of ourselves. Again, it ties back into the fourth house. What is the driver? Let me show you who I am through my deepest part of me. So for Taurus, it values exchange. This is naturally going to lead it to be, again, very good at acquiring resources, right? Accumulation becomes another central theme. I can acquire things very easily because I value that. How do we get things? We trade people for them. Right? I work, make money, and then I go to the store and I buy stuff. Or I build it myself. Use my skills. If we look at the 10th house for Taurus, 10th house is Aquarius. And this is kind of an interesting one. And this is going to tie back into that needing to set itself apart through its own worth. Right? What is Aquarius? Aquarius is fixed air sign ruled by Saturn. Aquarius is about society. It's about serving society. So publicly, right, 10th house deals with our public image. Publicly, what Taurus wants to be seen as is a servant, right? It's kind of low in a sense, because Aquarius, or Saturn, I should say, really, is low. It's common, right? It's not of anything exciting. It's very ordinary. But with Aquarius, you get an interesting paradox where it's a sign that's very common and resonates with the common person, but at the same time has a need to stand out. And so what Taurus wants to kind of publicly be seen as is somebody who stands out from the common person. Why? Because it's valuable. It's got that beauty, right? There's something about it that sets it apart. Hey, that one's much more beautiful than the others. That one has so much more worth than the others. That's what Taurus really wants to embody in a public way. And again, that ties back to if I can show myself as something valuable, right? I can attract something that's going to pursue me. That's 7th house Scorpio. Scorpio pursues. And if it pursues me, then maybe it can become intimate with me. And then it ties again back into that, let me serve things. If I'm serving, right, 6th house, right, then I'm obviously going to want to be seen publicly as a servant as well. Or that's going to be a natural kind of follow through from that. And it's not just about being a servant either. It's about caring for other people, right? It's about mutual benefit in that sense. Lastly, I don't know how I somehow didn't do the trine houses first, but here we are. We're at the trine houses, right? The 9th and the 5th. So the 5th house for Taurus is going to be Virgo, right? 5th house deals with our passions, deals with our creativity, our creations, deals with children too. And what do we have? We have the sign of Virgo. What is Virgo about? Virgo is really about serving, right? Virgo, we'll get to it in a few more episodes, but Virgo, one of the weird complexes with it is it tends to have a very low sense of self, right? It's got self-expression in the 12th house, which means it tends to not understand self-expression, So its dynamic is to work, to do things, especially towards other people. So for Taurus then, what does it find passion through? Through work, through service, through supporting others. That's where Taurus really tends to see its own passion kind of come out. It also means then, because Virgo is very detail-oriented, it's Mercury ruled sign, that it's got a strong attention to detail in terms of its creative capacity. Now, Virgo and Gemini are both ruled by Mercury, which means if we look at where Gemini is, where is it? It's in the second house. Second house is the house of value. It's what we value. So what Taurus values, as well as what Taurus creates, or its sense of passion, the things it's passionate about, its romantic life, right, is tied to its values. So what does that mean? It means valuing things that we create, right, or our kind of, you could even say sense of self-expression in some ways, our creative expression. But beauty, really, beauty is a fifth house thing in a lot of ways. So what does it value, right? Or Taurus's sense of beauty and its sense of value kind of go hand in hand. That's kind of where I was trying to get with that, right? This is why it's so value-oriented. Let me be valuable. Let me show off that value. Another thing, fifth house is house of risk, right? Because it's about fun and passions and things like that. And well, sometimes fun things are exciting. And Virgo is a very prudent sign, right? It's careful. It's making sure it's got a plan. And so what we see then for Taurus is that it's very prudent in regards to risks. This again ties back into the need to, avoid risk. Take a risk-averse approach in its day-to-day, right? Not be aggressive. Again, everything in its chart is so much about let me be safe. Because if I'm safe, I'm reliable. If I'm reliable, maybe you'll see me as valuable. The ninth house, finally. Ninth house is in Capricorn. And Capricorn is about what? It's about building. Right? It's a cardinal earth sign. It's about slowly chipping away, brick by brick, at something. And it's opposite to Cancer. And Cancer is about growing things. Capricorn's about building things. With Cancer, there's this, I understand I don't control the outcome of the thing directly, only indirectly. So I'll care for it, I'll nurture it, but I ultimately can't control its growth, right? It'll get to the end point some way, somehow outside of my control, but I can contribute to it. With Capricorn, that mindset is the thing doesn't happen unless I do it, right? There's a responsibility now. The ninth house deals with our worldview, deals with our beliefs, also deals with our purpose, in a sense, where we find purpose a little bit. And so where does Taurus find purpose? It finds purpose through building, through slowly chipping away at stuff. And this ties back to its approach. Day-to-day approach is very methodical, or maybe not methodical, but very slow, meandering, takes its time. Its approach to bigger picture things is to have to slowly chip away and build it. That slow Capricorn, let me lay it brick by brick. What that means then is that the way that Taurus grows is through its own slow building of itself. Again, ties back to accumulation. The worldview for Taurus is about slowly building, slowly accumulating what it needs, what it wants. And if we funnel this back into intimacy, the way intimacy happens is through slow connection. Intimacy is not something you can really truly rush. You can try, but it's probably going to be A, dangerous to do that, and B, probably not going to quite get there. Right? Intimacy happens over time. It's something you can slowly chip away at. And that's the Taurus mindset. Let me slowly grow myself. Let me slowly accumulate things. Let me slowly chip away so that I can have somebody who's intimate with me. And that feeds back into that very durable, long-lasting stable orientation. If I'm growing slowly, just by my own slow laying of bricks over time, right, then I can change, but I don't have to change in a way that's sudden. Because if I'm changing suddenly, I'm not going to be very consistent, and therefore not very safe or not very stable. So that's kind of an underlying, or really kind of underlying thing going on with the Taurian worldview. So that's pretty much everything. To kind of sum up, because I've repeated a few themes if you've noticed. Taurus is about femininity. Why? Because it wants this inward look. It wants to look at the inner value, focus on the inner value, figure it out, first of all, but then reflect that beauty outward and accumulate slowly material wealth, material comforts around it over time to present itself as something safe and stable. This means Taurus is going to be very reliable, very consistent, very stubborn, and slow to change, but it's going to be a sign that's very comforting and calm and safe. And one that at its heart is about serving other things, right? And caring for other things in an effort to provide utility, provide value to them so that they can come in and see that inner world. So that's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed. In the next episode, we'll take a look at the sign of Gemini. If you have any questions, comments, feel free to leave a comment. If you're looking for a reading, I do natal and relationship readings, so be happy to give one for you. But you can reach me at my website, jdastrology.com, or my email, james@jdastrology.com. So again, thank you for listening. Hope you have a wonderful week.